as people are still kind of joining in. So first of all, welcome everyone. My name is Morgan Cutright. I am the Assistant Dean of Admissions here at Campbell Law School. And I'll introduce our panelists in a second. But first of all, I just wanted to let you know that this will be recorded. So if you're not comfortable with that, feel free to jump off. We can definitely send you the recording afterwards. That's totally fine. But I always want to make sure that people know that ahead of time. Additionally, we have some questions that we've drafted to ask our panelists in advance, but if you have questions as well, feel free to drop them in the chat. We'll definitely get to them as we go through this discussion as well. So first and foremost, I'm just going to let our panelists introduce themselves. So I'll let them all popcorn off and I will start with Josue.
Hey everyone, my name is Josue Jimenez. I think some of you know me already. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions here at Campbell Law, graduated from Campbell Law in 2017, and I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in 2013. Did you want me to say something else?
Pick someone else to go next.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I'll go with Judge Hamadani because it's been a while since I've spoken to her.
Thank you for that. I'm Sam Hamadani. I'm a district court judge here in Wake County. I graduated from UNC undergrad in 2006 and UNC Law in 2011, which, if you haven't done the math, means I took 2 years off before I went to law school.
All right, now you pick someone else.
Oh, who else I'll pick Miss Madu.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Amaka Madu. I am currently a staff attorney at Legal Aid in the Raleigh office. I went to UNC Charlotte undergrad and I graduated in 2013. And then I went to Campbell Law for law school and I graduated in 2017, which means I took a year off after undergrad. And so I'm happy to be here.
Great.
And I guess
Wes?
Yep.
Yep, that's me. My name is Wesley Stewart. Everybody calls me Wes, though. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in 2016, and I am currently a 3L at Campbell Law, so I am set to graduate here in May of 2021. And I took 2 years off between graduating undergrad and coming to law school. I was a teacher for a little while. So, yep, that's me.
Awesome. Thank you all. So as you can see, we have a great panel here between a judge, a legal aid attorney, a current student, and Josue, who's in higher education. We have a complete diversity of careers within this panel as well. So if you have any questions about their path to where they are now, even though Wes is a little bit shorter as of right now, definitely feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll get to them as well. So the first question that I have is just why did you choose to go to law school? And Wes, since you went last, you get to go first.
All right, thanks, Morgan. I don't know that there's really any kind of defining moment in my life that made me say I want to be a lawyer. And in fact, I wanted to be a high school math teacher for as long as I can remember. And then when I went to UNC and I started taking math classes, I realized that was not the life that I wanted for myself. I hated math. I was good at it in high school, but I didn't care for it in college. So I ended up becoming a history major and kind of was left with what am I going to do with this degree? And so the two avenues I really floated around was either I go to law school and get my JD, or I pursue graduate studies and get a PhD in history. After talking to one family friend who was an attorney, really the only attorney I've ever known in my entire life, we kind of, with his guidance, decided that law school was probably the better option of the two, that it would give me more avenues and more doors than a PhD in history would. And so I kind of decided that was the route I wanted to take. I took 2 years off after graduating from UNC because I was a little burnt out on school and I knew that I would not be successful if I went immediately into law school. And so I ended up teaching history for a couple years. And now I am here. So there's not really any reason why I wanted to be a lawyer other than it kind of fit with what I did in school. Now that I'm in school and that I've done it, I feel like my calling in life is to teach and to educate people. And I think lawyers have the unique ability to do that for their clients. When clients come to us, and obviously I'm saying this in the future hypothetical because I don't have clients right now. I'm in law school. But I think when clients go to lawyers, they're seeking answers to their problems. And through that process, we educate them on the law and what they need to know about their circumstances. And in many ways, lawyers are teachers for their clients. They're teachers of the legal system, how it works. They're advisors and they're counselors, and I think that's what teachers do as well. And so I really think that is an aspect that I can carry into my profession, and ultimately it's something that maybe one day I can end up teaching law. That'd be awesome. But I think the chance to work closely with people to impact their lives directly and to educate them and work them through the system is ultimately something that I'll be happy to do when I start practicing.
That sounds great. Amaka?
Yeah, I'm with Wesley. There wasn't really like a defining moment where I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I think that was just something I've always wanted to do. And so there wasn't like a life event that happened where I was like, I definitely want to be an attorney. I want to go to law school. Being, a child of immigrants who migrated from Nigeria, I feel like there's like that ongoing joke where, you're either a doctor, engineer, or a lawyer. And I guess I just fell under one of those. I've always wanted to be a lawyer. And so it just kind of worked. I remember drafting a contract for my dad in high school so I could have a cell phone. It didn't work, but like I've always just been like, that kind of person to where I am always advocating for others. I'm the oldest out of all my siblings. I'm always looking at both sides and trying to be like a mediator. And I feel like I do that a lot with the type of work that I do. And so it just kind of works. I just kind of picked a career, stuck to it, and then I actually love what I do. So that's why I decided to go to law school.
Awesome. That's always great to hear. I never thought I would end up in this role, and I love what I do as well. So ending up finding what you're passionate about is so important. Judge Hamadani.
All right. So I'm sorry if my camera is moving a little bit. My laptop needed to be rebooted at work, and so I'm on my phone, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I would say when I was in my teens, what really intrigued me was all of the murder mysteries and TV shows surrounding crime, like Forensic Files and stuff like that. So that's always something that I really, really liked. And I along with Amaka, my parents are first generation immigrants. I'm a first generation immigrant, but we, are engineer, lawyer, doctor, stuff like that. So I knew that I wasn't going to be an engineer. Let's just say that. The doctor and lawyer were there. I had some other ideas. I really wanted to be a detective for a while. And then I wanted to be a medical examiner for a while because I really like the fact that you could kind of, I like the medicine aspect of it, the surgery, the cutting stuff. I know it sounds gory and weird, but that's just stuff that intrigued me. But I like the fact that it was like a puzzle. You got to look at an individual and how they ended up passing to try to fit what happened and see if it was crime related or not. So then in college, I took some high level biology classes and realized that medical school was not the thing for me. So I switched my major from biology to psychology. And I absolutely loved being a psychology major. And through that, I got into taking a lot of sociology classes, which I also really loved. And I would say probably more than my psychology classes. It really opened my eyes to a lot of injustices that I knew were there, but I didn't really, I guess, think deeply about. So that the study of sociology, I would say, is what really made my passion going to law school. That said, I wasn't 100% sure that's what I wanted to do when I graduated. So I decided to take 2 years off and kind of see where I was going to go with things, and it led me right back to law school. So here I am.
That's great. I actually did psychology as well and loved it. Josue?
So it's good to see so many children of immigrants and immigrants. I am also a child of immigrants. My parents came from Central America, and so that was a really big part of why I wanted to go to law school. Same as Judge Hamadani and Amaka, minus the engineer part. For me, it was either lawyer or doctor, and I really enjoyed both. But I did not make it as far as anyone else. For me, it was honors chemistry, 10th grade. My first C. I knew it wasn't gonna work. So that was like, all right, lawyer it is. And so for me, it was just I always knew I wanted to help people. I wanted to have as big of a positive impact in my community as possible, whatever that may be. You know, whether it was my local neighborhood or my state or whatever it was, I wanted to have a positive impact there. And so, the goal and the dream was always to become an attorney. That was kind of my mindset when I got to undergrad. But I didn't know any attorneys prior to undergrad. And so I started off like most people that want to go to law school as poli-sci and Spanish double major, and I hated poli-sci, did not go well either. And so then I switched majors, and so then I switched to international studies and religious studies. And then I did a lot better. And so once I graduated, I was before I do this thing that's going to be a huge time commitment and financial commitment as well, let me confirm that this is actually what I want to do, because I didn't know what it looked like on a day-to-day basis. I saw the movies, I saw the shows, but I was like, let me confirm that this is really what I want to do. So then I was able to work at a small firm, and I loved it, and it confirmed for me that this is definitely the path I want to take. And then came back to Raleigh, been here for 6 years now.
That's great. I think it's really interesting that everyone took some time off in between as well. I took a semester kind of time off because I graduated in December. So, but I knew I needed that break too. So I always think that's really interesting when you're in a panel full of people that kind of all have a commonality in that aspect. So kind of going off of what Josue mentioned, did you all know any attorneys before you started law school? And if so, were they helpful in preparing for applying or just getting the vibes of law school and surviving it, since it is really hard? And then whoever wants to chime in can go first.
I can go first. I personally didn't know any attorneys before I went to law school. I had a really, my major was psychology and political science, but I was a part of like the pre-law association at UNC Charlotte. And so the mentor over that was really, really helpful for me. Like she was not a lawyer, but she taught a lot of the pre-law classes, and she was in like criminal justice and stuff like that. And so she was really, really helpful and beneficial for me. Like it just helped me know like what I needed to do to prepare for law school, like taking the LSAT, taking Kaplan courses to prepare for the LSAT and things like that. And so that was really, really beneficial for me. And it was kind of, I took the LSAT, I think twice. And so I took it the first, like my senior year in college, and taking the LSAT and also still being a student was really hard for me. And so that's why I knew I wanted to take a year off. And she really coached me and walked me through that to make sure that I was, not just jumping into something just because I felt like I had to go straight to law school after undergrad. And so that was really, really beneficial for me. And I do feel that, being a first generation Nigerian, that not really knowing or having anyone to look up to like in that role was kind of, I kind of struggled with that, but I kind of created relationships and mentorships like with other people to kind of just help me and guide me along the way. So.
I guess I'll go next. So I knew one person who was an attorney, and it was a family friend's daughter. And she went to Wake Forest. I grew up in Winston-Salem. and her parents lived in Virginia Beach. So they kind of left her to my parents to take care of while she was in law school. So she would come over, and I was really really young, but it's funny that I don't, and Amaka as well, don't know any attorneys, because your parents are like, you know, you should be a lawyer or a doctor, but they don't even really know what an attorney does, to be quite honest. They just know that that's what they want you to be. So that's my only frame of reference. But she ended up being a really big mentor for me, even out of high school going into college. She was very helpful for me. And that was before I even knew that law is something I wanted to pursue. Of course, when I was in college, and it was in the back of my mind, but not something I was really 100% on. She had a law firm in New York. It was uh, trademark copyright law firm. I went over there for a summer. I was able to live with her and work in her law office. And I liked it. Don't get me wrong, it was great. She had a wonderful practice. It was a boutique law firm, very small, and a fun place to work. And I was in New York City. But it was pretty much office work, and it's not something that really interested me. But she was very very helpful from pretty much high school through, even as Amaka said, when I didn't know if I wanted to go straight to law school, she said don't go if you're not sure. And my parents were pissed when they found out I wasn't going to go straight away. They were like, if you don't go right now, you're never going back to school. I just up and picked up and moved to Washington, D.C. They were really upset. And she, even though she was very, very close to my parents, said, don't listen to them. Follow what you think you want to do. And if you're not 100% sure, don't go. You're going to be in a lot of debt and regret it if you go, and that's not something you want to do. So she was very helpful. In addition to that, she helped me with, you know, I forget what they're called for undergrad and law school, but those essays you have to write to get in the application, you know what I'm talking about.
The
But anyway,
personal
she
statement.
did yes, those personal statements. She helped edit those and looked over my grammar errors and stuff like that. And she was also kind of a mentor on a personal level as well. If I had conundrums about life or something I needed to talk to her about, she was always there. So I did have that one lawyer, but that was about it in terms of knowing anyone that's an attorney.
Yeah, I think, and Kendra mentioned this in the chat, that it's really difficult when you don't know anyone who's traveled down the road that you're traveling down and that you want to go down. So finding mentors in those places is just so important. Wes or Josue, do y'all want to talk about your experiences?
I mean, I kind of mentioned it. I knew one attorney, and that was my college roommate's dad, and he was my roommate for 4 years. However, outside of writing a letter of recommendation for me for law school and me shadowing him at his office one day, not even one day, like 2 hours, I had zero experience with the law or with what it would entail to be a lawyer. I just had it in my mind that, oh, I could do something cool with a law degree. I never talked to him about law school. I never talked to him about being a lawyer. It really was just like, hey, you're a lawyer, great relationship, in many ways, he's like my second father, but we just never really talked about law. So that was never really something that I kind of thought about. So for me, choosing law school was just like honestly, it was a little bit of a shot in the dark, and it turned out to be a really great shot in the dark. But sometimes it happens that way. And like Kendra said, it is difficult when you don't know anyone. I did know someone, but in many respects, I didn't utilize that to help me make my decision. So it was kind of like I didn't know anyone.
So let me just rephrase. I think I answered incorrectly, because once I took some time off before I went to law school, in that 2-year period, I met a lot of attorneys because the work that I did in that 2-year period involved the law on a regular basis. So I did, but I didn't, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Makes sense. Yeah, for me, no, I already mentioned, I worked in between my year of undergrad and law school for an attorney. For me, I didn't know anyone, and so my now fiance, she was finishing up undergrad in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so I knew I wanted to live there for a year. And so at the time, I was really interested in immigration law. And so I looked up all the immigration attorneys in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and I emailed them all. And I told them, I just graduated from college. Here's my resume. I'm planning on going to law school eventually. Not sure if it's going to be next year or the year after that. If you need any kind of help or legal assistant or paralegal, I'm bilingual. And so that out of those, two responded. One said no, and the other one said, I may have something. And so I spoke with him. We got along really well. And so he hired me as his legal assistant. And so I got to do a lot of work. It was him and two other attorneys. It was all immigration work. They covered different areas of law, but they all had an immigration component to it. So I learned a lot. And they trusted me with a lot of responsibility. So I was really doing everything. And so I really enjoyed it, and it definitely confirmed for me that that's what I wanted to do. And so those three attorneys were the people that became kind of like my guides as far as like what I wanted to become as an attorney whenever I graduated. And so they really helped me out to kind of essentially set an example of what I wanted to eventually do as an attorney.
Yeah, so I know I'm the moderator, but I have to tell this little story too, because I'm also first generation. My brother went to college, but I'm definitely the only person in my family who's ever gone to law school, even graduate school, anything. And so during that semester when I graduated, I worked as a runner at a law office, a very small one. There were only two attorneys, and the entire time, both attorneys telling me not to go to law school, which I think it's an important thing to share, because in my experience, in my role, and I'm always telling students this too, is that this profession is such a welcoming profession that most of the time, if you just do what Josue did and contact some attorneys in the area, they're happy to talk to you about what they do. They're happy to have you shadow them. They're happy to talk about their experiences, their law school experiences. They may not always have a great law school experience. Most people, the stress kind of fogs their memory of it. And so they may not look at law school fondly. I do, because I'm a nerd. But so I think that's really important to be able to know that the legal community is actually really welcoming. And if you ever encounter people who may be like, well, I wouldn't go to law school if I were you. Yeah, so the don't go to law school thing, don't let that color your opinions and your judgment. Try to seek out someone who maybe doesn't feel quite as, I don't want to say bitter, but doesn't quite feel that way about it. Yeah, exactly. Like, just like Latrice said, so she worked for a former JAG attorney that still asks why I'm going to law school. And those things are hard, right? Because you have a person who's telling you, like, don't do this. Like, this was a terrible experience. Law school was the worst time in my life, whatever it may be. But for every one person that's like that, there's 10 other people who are willing to take you in and have those conversations. And that's something, and me and Josue are always happy to do that too, because we are first gen, we know how hard it is, and we know what the legal community is like, so you can always come to us as well. So I just wanted to throw that story out there, because I think students encounter it a lot more than, I just hear a lot of students come to me and say, I was told not to go to law school, but this is something I kind of want to do, and now I don't really know what to do. So just keep that in mind as well. What advice would you all have for trying to find a mentor within law school or during the application process to kind of help you through this journey? How did you go about finding a mentor? What does a mentor look like to you? So, for example, I had a mentor in law school that always told me to don't choose cheerleaders, choose mentors, because it's easy to find somebody to cheer you along, but you really want somebody who's going to help you develop. So whoever wants to go first.
I'll take this one first, since I'm the one that's still in school, and I'm still in some ways developing relationships with people as mentors. For me, I didn't have any mentors through the process of applying and coming to school. And I think I am the type of person that I want my work to speak for myself. I am not the type of person that is going to, kiss butt and just make my face seen and have conversations just for the sake of having conversations and networking. I think that is cheap, and I think typically people can see through it. So my philosophy especially during the first year of law school, was just to bust my butt, grind, and I was going to let my grades and my work show for myself and speak for myself. And that was ultimately what opened the door for the mentor that I have, Professor Kent at Campbell, because I actually was able to book his class and score. I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to say what my grade was, but I'm going to. I got a 100 in his class, and he pulled me aside on the first day of the spring semester and said, look, I don't give these grades to 1Ls, but you did so great. Like, you forced my hand, essentially. And that was the beginning of our relationship. And he is a mentor for me. I work for him during the summers as a research assistant. He was going to be letters of recommendation for me when I was pursuing clerkships. Ultimately, I got a job offer, so I did not go that route. But, he's someone that I always can go to his office and I know that he's going to give me the straight up advice. He's not, like Morgan said, going to be just a cheerleader telling me, oh, you did great. I'm hearing your grades are good. No, he's going to give me the real deal, and he's going to be honest with me. And I appreciate that from him. But he's not my only mentor. I mean, there's other professors that I've used for other reasons. When I had my comment published in a law review, I had another professor that was more well-versed in that area of law that, read my work and gave me comments on it and gave me thoughts to consider when I was, in my drafting and redrafting phases. And then I'm even developing relationships now with current professors that I've had last semester that I'm going to have this semester. I mean, it's, the getting mentors is a never-ending process. It's always going to continue to go. Even when you become a partner in a law firm, there is going to be someone that can be a mentor for you to develop. And Latrice asked how you use them efficiently or effectively. I can't answer that because you have to use them however it best works for you. For me, my mentors are just sounding boards. I am a stubbornly, for better or worse, independent person. I like figuring things out on my own. And for me, it's just using them as a sounding board. Is this a good idea, a bad idea, whatever? And I feel like I'm talking too much, so I'm going to stop there. But yeah, I mean, you just have to kind of use it however you want to use it, and you just develop them all the time.
I guess I can go next. I don't think I had a mentor before law school. I know I had my pre-law advisor kind of help me with the law school process and the application. Like, she proofread my personal statement and things like that. But I think for me, I was just kind of I wasn't really looking for a mentor. I think I just wanted to do everything I needed to do to apply to law school and then just submit and hope I get in, right? And so that was kind of like my main goal. But once I got to law school, most of my mentors were professors, just kind of helping me with not even networking outside of law school, just kind of helping me through law school itself. Law school was really hard for me. And so that was just like really helpful for me. And I think when you are trying to make a connection with a mentor, I think you just have to be genuine, right? Most mentors know that, if you reach out to them or if you're networking, you probably do, want, to get more insight about a particular job or a position, or knowing what you need to do to get to a particular place. And some of them are okay with it because they were in your position not too long ago, or probably are still in your position now. And so I would just advise you to just think about what you want in a mentor and what you want to get out of it. And then, just kind of reach out. Like, if you are at a panel like you are now and you see someone who is, that you think that you could click with, that you think that you can learn from, like, reach out to them. I still consider myself a baby attorney, so I still do that now. I attend panels just like you guys. And if I see an attorney or a judge that I'm like, I really think I could learn from them, or I want to kind of pick their brain about a particular area of law, I reach out to them. You know, it's kind of hard in COVID. So I just think that in order to get a mentor, you have to kind of think about what you want to get out of the relationship. And it works both ways, right? And so I think as law students, just kind of knowing what you're interested in. Like if you know you want to do family law, but you're not sure, you know, reach out to someone who does that type of law, and they'll be real with you and let you know what you need to do or how you need to prepare for that. So.
Judge Hamadani.
Okay, so I am kind of in Wes's field in that I didn't really search out for my mentors. I wasn't a huge networker in law school. I always felt really awkward having small talk with people and forcing the conversation. I've gotten a lot better at it now that I have to run for election every 4 years, unfortunately. But you know, it shouldn't be about having to force yourself to do stuff that makes you uncomfortable. For me, mentors have kind of fallen into place in different timelines of my life. For example, I had that family friend who was my mentor up until when I actually through law school. Once I started working, I developed another mentor who was my boss then, who is now a superior court judge. Those people kind of fell into place for me, and perhaps it's because I was fortunate enough to know somebody who was a lawyer growing up. Not everyone has that. And I agree with what Wes says, but not everyone's going to make 100 on their exam and have the professor be like, hey, I would like to pretty much help you out and hook you up with this job. I mean, I certainly wasn't making hundreds on my exams. So sometimes the reality is if you're not finding it through natural ways, you do have to make some effort if that's something that you need in your life. And I guess my best recommendation would be you don't have to just have one mentor. In my opinion, it's great to have a mentor in the type of field that you are interested in. And it might be hard to find a mentor that is similar to you in that field. Especially as a minority female, I had difficulty. My mentor in when I was a public defender and still today, who's a superior court judge now, he is fantastic. But he's you know doesn't under I mean, he does understand immigrants and what they go through, and women and what they go through. But sometimes you want to have another female, if you are a female or an immigrant or someone of a different race and ethnicity, that you could talk to about those issues as well. So you don't have to just have one mentor. You can branch out and have different mentors for different types of topics. And I guess the best way to, and I know someone asked in the chat, the best way to make that relationship is as effective as possible is to understand that it needs to go both ways. They need to, I guess, kind of, I don't want to say enjoy it, but if it's like an actual friendship and a mutual respect, then they are going to enjoy it. And something I've learned as both a mentee and a mentor to other people is I love when my mentees reach out to me and tell me the good things that are happening in their lives and the things that they've had successes on. I know that I did that a few times with my mentors, and they seemed to love hearing it. I wasn't sure if they actually loved it or were just saying, you know, great, congratulations, we're so proud of you. But now that I have been a mentor to a few people, when I hear it, it actually makes me really proud. So I think ways to engage your mentor into feeling like, you know, what they're doing is helping can be very effective as well.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say, everybody who, no matter what stage of this that you're in, you can always be a mentor to someone else. So for example, I know Wes is a scholar for students. So I think even having that perspective of, you know, I have these great mentors, but also there's a responsibility on me to reach back and help others that have that are coming after me. I think that's really important too. Josue, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, yeah, I definitely wasn't getting hundreds in my classes, as Amaka knows, since she was one of my classmates. But but as most of you know, or that know me, I talk to everyone, regardless. Like, and I'll talk to you all day. And so that's kind of what really helped me. There was never a time where I was like actively searching for a mentor. I'm like, oh, this person's gonna be my mentor, so I'm only gonna talk to them. Um, I just talk to everyone. And so it's just out of that kind of naturally mentorship relationships came out of that. And so even with Judge Hamadani, I met her at a campaign event for one of my former professors, who's one of my favorite professors. And she was the one that introduced us, was like, you need to meet this great person who's also running for judge. And so through her, I met Judge Hamadani. We built a relationship, and now she's one of my mentors. And so, it's important to build those relationships, like everyone said, in each stage that you're in. If you're a law student, with professors or with scholars like Wes, because especially with fellow classmates, they're going to go on to be partners or politicians or supervising attorneys, and you might need their help, or to someone to consult with. And it's just a different bond that you build through law school. So that's one way of having, those relationships, in that, in the non-traditional way, I guess that you could say, of reaching for a mentor. But also, when you're interning at places, keeping in touch with people, or every time you find, I worked at Legal Aid, and then I worked with the Department of Public Safety, and now I'm in admissions. And so in each place that I would seek out someone that had been there for a while and try to absorb as much as I could and learn from them, and so I could do the best that I can. And so there's little ways that you can create those relationships. That doesn't have to be like a clear cut specific way of like, this is my mentor, So, and like Judge Hamadani says, it's not something that you need to force. It just naturally, like, I'm not gonna text her every week or every day, as much as I would like to, because she's cool to talk to. But
You can.
but you don't want to be annoying either. So that's, I think, having that balance of understanding that it is at the to a certain extent a professional relationship as well. I think is important. But yeah, I mean, mentors can be all over the place.
That's great. I mean, I just think that's so important. And a lot of times your mentors are people you don't even think of as mentors. They can just be friends that are helping you in a certain way, or maybe your classmate is really good at contracts and you're really good at property, but y'all aren't great at the others. So kind of mentoring through subjects as well. So kind of like I think the biggest thing that, at least in my experience, that first generation students tend to face is this level of imposter syndrome. And for those of you who may not know what that means, it just means that you're in a place where you don't feel like you belong, where you don't feel like you're good enough to be there, you're smart enough to be there, whatever it may be. And I think first generation students tend to experience that a little bit more because they are the first in their family. So I'm curious as to if you all have any specific moment of feeling that way and how you kind of overcame that.
I guess,
Uh,
go ahead. Okay. I guess I can go. I think I still feel that today, even as an attorney, if I'm being like quite honest. I am a first generation law student. I mean, like, I was a first generation law student, and I mean, I went to Campbell Law. I don't know how many of you guys are familiar with Campbell Law, but I want to say Josue was in my class, and there was maybe 9 minority students out of my class of 140 something. And so I kind of felt that every day when I walked into Campbell. And I think just kind of reminding yourself and having people in your corner to remind you that you are there, you took the same LSAT that they took, you did the same application process. And I think just kind of having people in your support system like that really, really helped me. And knowing that I feel like for first generation immigrants, children of immigrants, your parents put a lot of pressure on you too, right? Like you feel as though if you don't accomplish this, like you would be a disappointment to them. And thankfully my mom was not like that, but I still felt that pressure, right? Like every time she would introduce me to someone, she would always say, oh, it's my daughter, she's in law school. Even now she says, oh, this is my daughter, she's an attorney. And so I still get that now. And I think sometimes you just kind of have to remind yourself you are where you are supposed to be. And I think it has not gone away for me yet. I still have to remind myself that I am where I am supposed to be. I took the same bar as everyone else. I'm just as qualified to be an attorney like everyone else. And so I think that if you are dealing with imposter syndrome or if you're dealing with self-doubt, I think just kind of daily reminders that you are where you need to be. It's easier said than done for sure. And I think for me, law school was just hard in general. So I was just more so focused on not failing my classes. That was like my biggest concern. Like I didn't have a job, after I graduated law school. I was just happy to walk across the stage, right? So that for me, that was just like an accomplishment within itself. I did not, book any class. I just survived. And I think you just have to remind yourself that you are surviving and you are where you're supposed to be.
So if anyone here was in the racial equity symposium, I guess last week, you've probably heard my story about self-doubt and the fact that a lot of folks who are of different ethnicities, minorities, women, etc., have this self-doubt just socialized in them. But I kind of want to start with, a question, and that's, there's been generations and generations and generations of lawyers and folks who've been to graduate school. The question is, why are we the first in our generation? And yes, there are I'm sure there are a few people who, have had it made and they still are the first generation. But for a lot of people, it's because they are of immigrant descent and did not have those opportunities in the countries where they came from, or they're of minorities in this country who have not had the opportunities that some other people have, or low socioeconomic backgrounds, or a combination of all of the three, or just women in general. So that is a question that, to me surrounds this whole panel. First and foremost, but all of those individuals, including myself, have throughout our lives been kind of chipped away at into thinking, you're lacking or you're less or you're not as qualified for whatever reason in the panel. And I hate to be repetitive, but every time when I was a public defender or now as a judge, when people hear Sam Hamadani is your attorney or your judge, they automatically, before seeing you, assume that I'm a man. When I walk into the room, they're just shocked that I'm a female. When I first became an attorney and I would go into the courtroom as a public defender, they would, well, not they, but several people assumed I was the interpreter rather than an attorney. So, I mean, there's just little things in day-to-day life that just chip away at you shouldn't be an attorney, you shouldn't be an attorney, you shouldn't be qualified, you aren't qualified, etc. So I think a pivotal moment in my life where I realized that subconscious self-doubt exists for us. And by us, I mean anybody who has been in a position to have those, chips every day at their self-confidence, is that when a position became open for the seat that I now have, I didn't put my name in at first, and I knew it was a dream of mine. It's something I wanted to do, but I had this self-doubt in my head saying, you're not qualified. You've only been an attorney for 6 years. This is ridiculous. What I was not thinking is you are working basically front lines in district court every single day. You know the courtroom and the procedure and the law like the back of your hand. You're just as qualified as all of the other people who are putting their names in, if not more. Some less, obviously, but there were people who didn't necessarily have that self-doubt ingrained in them who put their names in without questioning for a second. But I think it's just important that you are aware of that imposter syndrome and that self-doubt when it comes creeping in, because it's not something that it's not explicit. You don't just see it. It's not conscious. It's really subconscious. So you just have to be aware of it when you hear that voice in your head that you're not as good, or you're not qualified, or you shouldn't be here. Is to just tackle it head on and say, I went to law school. I graduated from law school. As Amaka said, I passed the same bar as everybody else. So why do I have this feeling that I should not and don't deserve to be treated like everybody else who has done the same things? So yes, it happens every day. Yes, it happens more for people who are first generation law students. And my best advice is just to be very, very self-aware of that self-doubt when it just kind of creeps into your mind.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal advice. Just having that self awareness and that knowledge when you have those feelings of doubt. Wes or Josue, do you have anything to add?
Well, very briefly, most definitely, I still feel that all the time whenever Morgan messages me and says, "Can you come to my office real quick?" I'm like, well, I guess today is the day I get fired. And so that doubt is all the time.
To be clear, it's never about him
Yeah, well,
needing
and
any
then I get there and
firing.
I'm like, oh, okay, it's someone else. All right. But no, it's yeah, I mean, it's something that I feel like Amaka alluded to. You have to have a support group wherever you are, and she was a big part of that for me while I was in law school. And you know, it's something that you have to learn how to deal with and process because, like Judge Hamadani said, it's not something that's it's like explicit, you know. It's like, oh, there's my imposter syndrome kicking in. No, it's just you just feel it, you know. It's just and so just making sure that you're reminding yourself um, that you belong, like everyone else said. And for me, it was partially too like um, reflecting, taking time to reflect on everything that I have been through just to get to this point, to remind myself why I want to do this. And not just me, but my parents, because even like Amaka said about her mom, like even though my parents weren't, that constant pressure on me, I just put it on myself because I knew their journey and I knew everything they had been through just to give me the opportunity to have this opportunity, this privilege to get to law school. And so, thinking about that, reflecting on that, really, once I put that into perspective, I was like, there's nothing I can deal with here in law school, or that, that I can face as an attorney that compares to all of that. And if they got through it, then I have no reason to not get through it. And that's what really helped me out. And so, I think, once you're in law school, when as you're preparing to apply to get into law school, have a support group. Remind yourself, and this goes with personal statements. Remind yourself of why you want to do this, what you did to get here, and why you want to become an attorney, and that'll really help you out.
I don't really have a whole lot to add. I feel like everyone's hit it pretty well. I will say that a lot of my imposter syndrome came when I was in undergrad, actually. I'm a first gen college student, period. And so a lot of my do I really belong here hit me, especially in the first 2.5 years that I was at UNC. I struggled with a lot of self doubt, especially after that first semester when my GPA came back. I really questioned whether I was even cut out for upper level studies. Ultimately I got through it and graduated, and I have it at times now. Obviously, I am a white male, so some of the issues that Judge Hamadami was talking about, I don't have those same issues. Most of the time, my privilege allows me to walk in a room, and most people will just recognize me because I'm a white class male. However, my imposter syndrome kicks in because I want that not to be the reason why people talk to me and recognize me. I want, like I said, my work to speak for myself. And so I put, like Josue said, so much pressure on myself to do better because I want my name to mean something when I graduate and when I start practicing. And so I put honestly, it's way too much pressure that I put on myself, but I put a lot on my shoulders. And a lot of times my doubt is, can I even carry the pressure that I'm putting on myself? And so I have to be cognizant of how much I am really challenging myself to do and realize that I am sometimes unrealistic in what I am putting on my shoulders. And when I have those moments, usually I take a break, I step completely away from law school, and I will go walk around Target, or I will go play with my dog, or just something completely not related to law or even thinking. That way I can kind of reset and get back into it.
And I just wanted to add one more thing. I will say just 2 more points. And so for me, I would say for anyone in law school that's experiencing like imposter syndrome, like I talked about having people in your corner and having a good support group. Like for me, law school was like kind of competitive, like where everyone would talk about what their grades were. So I would say if you are experiencing imposter syndrome, don't surround yourself with people who are just wanting to show you that they're better than you, right? Like, because that does not, you don't need to know what I got in a class. You just need to know I passed, right? And so I would say just surrounding yourself with people who uplift you and not people that tear you down. And then my second point is my experience, like as my parents are, you know, Nigerian, but like when someone looks at me, the first thing that they see is that I am African American, right? And so for me, a lot of things that I struggle with in addition just to going to law school is that being around people who never really like surrounded themselves with people that looked like me, right? So when I was in law school and even now in my profession, just getting questions about my hair, getting questions about me speaking on behalf of other people that look like me, dealing with that. And then on top of having to go to law school and study and worry about your classes, for me, that was really, really stressful. So just kind of having people like reaching out to attorneys who look like you, who experience probably the same thing that you experience. Because for me, I just want to go to class and like study and like, you know, take my notes, but then you have individuals asking me about, like I have individuals asking me about my hair, right? Like I shouldn't be like, you know, stressed about walking into a building and being asked about my appearance, like, you know. And so for me, that was really, really hard for me. And I think, you know, just kind of, you know, once you, and I still struggle with that today, being in a profession that is, you know, I think 5% of attorneys in the United States are African American. So when you think about that, that's kind of, you know, something that we have to deal with. But I think, you know, just being confident in yourself and just knowing that, you know, there will be people who never understand you. And I think a lot of people have to understand that, you know, everyone comes from different backgrounds, everyone does not look the same, and just being confident in who you are and knowing, for me, the end goal was like, I want to be someone that other people that look like me can look up to. And so I feel like just kind of having that in your corner to keep you pushing forward is also important as well. So.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that, Amaka. And thank you all for being very vulnerable, because I know that's really, it feels really personal, but it's also such a helpful conversation to have, because it's kind of like mental health. Like it's just, you know, people experience it and it's important to recognize it and know how to deal with it when it comes up. So I only have one more question for you all, and then we'll double check the chat and see if there's any questions there. And I know this is something, again, just based off of my experience, that I struggled with too, in that because you're the first in your family doesn't really understand what you're going through. They just think you're smart. Like, for example, when you're studying for the bar exam, Wes, you don't know this yet, but it's coming. Family, they're always going to be like, well, you'll do fine, you'll be great, I don't know why you're stressed, you're smart, you can do this, like you made it through law school, you'll be fine. So how have you all had those conversations with your parents about what's helpful in supporting you in law school and your career, and what can be maybe not so helpful, and also explaining to them that, like, I'm not going to be able to talk to you every day because I'm going to be studying every day. How did y'all have those conversations? Just for whoever wants to jump in first.
Well, for me, I was very clear up front with both my parents and with my girlfriend that I was going to be on my time, and that they were just going to have to live with it. And that, quite frankly, I did not want to hear their complaints due to my studying and my habits. That went about as well as you probably think it went. All jokes aside, it's a learning process. I said that up front, like, hey, I'm going to be studying probably 60 to 70 hours a week between classes, reading, and studying. So my time is going to be a little limited. However, it's not until you really get into it that they start to see what you have going on, and it's going to be a learning process for them as well. It really wasn't until probably October, November of that first semester that everyone, my parents and my girlfriend, kind of found that rhythm where they knew not to interrupt me and text me 100 times a day or call me or expect me to call them every day. It's a process, and I really don't know what to say other than you just have to kind of learn it. It's not something you can really go in and say, okay, we're going to set Wednesday as our family FaceTime, and Tuesday and Thursdays will be date night, over FaceTime, whatever. You just have to feel it out. And, law school especially is something that is so unique to every single person. Everyone does it differently. There's no cookie cutter method to how you do law school. I know, Kendra, you kind of put in the chat a question of how you handle other students being more, quote, well-versed in surviving law school. And while I think other students may have a better indication of what it's going to take and the amount of time it will take to study, no one is truly well-versed in it. And everyone's going to struggle to find their rhythm. Some find it faster than others, and some, struggle to find it. And that's okay. It's all about finding what works for you. But really, it's just you find your own rhythm, you find your own routine, and you just have to trust that the people around you are going to be flexible and accommodate to that rhythm. And I think that's really the only thing that I've found in my own personal life. It's just finding that rhythm and letting them kind of accommodate and fit around that. But also, talking to my friends, it's kind of the same way. Ultimately, our law school, our grades come first, and everything else kind of comes after that. At the same time, I definitely take breaks to spend time with my family. It's not like I'm just a robot going through law school. You have to take those moments to reset. And so it's just a balance. And I can't really answer what everyone else's balance is because mine is very different. But it's finding that rhythm, finding that routine, and just going for it.
I think Wes is absolutely right that it is a balance. My parents and my family have no boundaries, and they don't understand boundaries like at all. So, for me, I have nothing on that. I just learned to juggle them and law school at the same time. I still get texts from my mom, like a whole barrage of them during the day. And all I can do is say, I'm on the bench. Is this an emergency? And then finally she'll say, no, just call me when you're done. And I'm like, well, I'm at work. So for some people, it's just going to continue. For some people, it's not. But hey, the reality is the real world is a huge juggle, and you're gonna need to learn how to juggle folks that don't really understand where you're at. For me, my family, my friends, my close friends are the most important people to me. So making sure that I handled that situation in a respectful way, despite how stressful it was important, because you don't want to burn those bridges either. And one thing Wes said is it's all a balance. I know that law school seems pretty much like the end of the world. You either got to ace your exams or it's over. That's not how it is. You will be fine regardless. And I know y'all at Campbell are going to hate the fact that I'm saying this, but your grades matter to some extent. But your mental health and your emotional well-being also matter. You're not going to be able to graduate from law school and help anybody if you've just completely burned your brain. So just focus on having downtime, having you time, having friend time, especially in the middle of a freaking pandemic. I mean, this could be potentially, and I don't think we're seeing the effects of it yet, but such a impact on people's mental health, especially if you are in medical school or law school where, studying constantly is something that's expected of you. But just keep in mind there are, depending on what you want to do. I mean, if you want to go work for, one of the top law firms in the state or even in the country, yeah, you got to have killer grades. But I knew at some point that I wanted to be a public defender. And I knew that having, being top 10 in my class was not something I needed to do. So I focused a lot on externships, stuff that got me out into the real world, and got me the experience I needed rather than focusing on making sure I made an A plus in every single class. So just remember that the real world is still there. It is not on pause, and just try to be part of it as well as doing well in law school.
I agree with Judge Hamadani. My parents and my family also have no boundaries. So being in law school was really tough for me, but I think once I got in it, my mom understood like the seriousness of it. I decided to go to Campbell because I was still able to live at home at the same time. After undergrad, my dad passed away, so I decided to come back home, stay with my mom, and then also still go to law school and be there for her. And so I think for her, she was just happy that I was home, right? So if I couldn't talk to her, if she knew I was just in the house, she was happy. I think I got more, I experienced more of my friends not understanding that I was in law school because I'm from Raleigh. So I have a lot of friends who live in Raleigh. And so, if it's Friday night, they want to, go out and things like that. And I'm like, I am in law school. I have to study. Like, even though I'm not in class, I still have to study. My friends really didn't understand, like, I graduated, UNC Charlotte, like magna cum laude. So I got a lot of the, oh, you're smart, like you're going to figure it out, like you'll be okay. And I'm like, everyone is smart in law school. So I have to, still work hard, and it's still stressful and things like that. But I agree with Wesley and Judge Hamadani, like it's a balance. I think my mom probably didn't realize how serious it was until I was studying for the bar. When I studied for the bar, we lived in the same house and she never saw me. So that's when she knew like the seriousness of my work, and she just kind of gave me the space that I needed, but then I was still always there for her when she needed. Because I feel like as, children of immigrants, like the parent-children relationship is pretty strong. Like we are kind of there to always help our parents. I feel like it reverses as you get older. I feel like I am more of the parent now than, my mom is the parent. And so I think that's just cultural. And I think just finding a balance and still making that space and time to be there for your friends and family. For me, I only have one mom. So just like Judge Hamadani, my mom will text me and, call me multiple times. And I'm like, I am in court, what is going on? And it will just be something so minor, but I still get that today, right? And so I think just kind of, still being respectful and understanding that, your parents will always be your parents, and that, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my mom's support. And so I think just kind of knowing your boundaries and knowing it's not always, you don't always have to answer their call. If my mom really needs me, like she knows where I work. So I think just, having those boundaries, and like they will respect it. If they don't respect it at the beginning, they'll respect it once they see how serious you are. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, that's a tough conversation to have with your parents, especially have them realize that, you guys don't come first right now. Law school does. So, it's definitely setting those boundaries, managing those expectations, and letting them know. But part of it is also them, whether it's your family members or your friends, is them having a certain level of understanding, and getting that this is for you, this is an investment in yourself and your career and what you want to accomplish. And so once they see that, once they understand that, it was a lot easier for me to communicate with them and tell them like, hey, during the 2 weeks of finals, I'm not gonna have time to call you every night at 9 o'clock like I normally do. Even if it's just a 5 minute conversation, I just don't have that time. You'll hear from me in 2 weeks, and then I'll be done for a month, and we'll see each other. So setting those boundaries is important, but also with friends, um, there's never gonna be a time. You're probably experiencing this now in life, but especially in law school and once you graduate from law school, but there's never going to be a time where you're just sitting there and you're like, I have absolutely nothing to do. There's always something you could be working on. There's always something that you could be doing. And so having, you have to prioritize and make time for the people that you care about and for the things that you care about, but they also have to understand that. And if there's a moment where, particularly with friends, they're struggling with understanding that and they refuse to understand and they still expect you to be as present as you normally are or you were before law school, then it's time to assess. It's like, does this person actually have my best interests in mind and what I want to accomplish in mind, or is this just something for them? And sometimes you have to make those decisions, those difficult decisions of, you know, hey, it's been great, but right now I need to focus on myself. And that's it, and if that's what you got to do, that's what you got to do. And so, really, for a lot of us, law school, once you start law school, it's the first time where you actually have to be a little bit selfish because this is at the end of the day for you. You're the one that has to take the exams, you're the one that has to take the bar exam, you're the one that has to start practicing and working. And so, this is something, that's an investment in you, and you have to make sure that you're also focusing on yourself as well. And lastly, for those of you in relationships with significant others, definitely make time for them, as Wes can tell you. If you're not in your law school, my girlfriend, Friday nights was our time together. During the rest of the week, I was busy, but that was our hangout time. And she made it through law school with me, and that's why I was like, she's definitely the one. So that's why I asked her to marry me. But it's you have to deal with each relationship differently. So you have to make sure that you're setting boundaries, you're assessing, do these people actually care about me? And like I said, this is like the fifth time I say it, but this is an investment in yourself, and you have to make sure that you're doing what's best for you in these 3 years that you're in law school.
Absolutely. And the naysayers will also mention that if you don't have a very strong relationship going into law school, don't expect to have it going out. Not always true. So just keep that in mind as well. It's all about balance and all about making sure that everyone has some pretty decent expectations going in. Josue has been with his now fiance for 10 years. So there's definitely ways to do it. So that's something to keep in mind as well. So we are over our time, and I want to be respectful of our panelists' times because they've taken time out of their day to do this as well. Are there any last burning questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or throw them in the chat. I think Kendra, Wes answered your question about being well-versed. I was going to say the same thing. Nobody's well-versed in law school, no matter if they had attorneys in their families or not. Everybody comes to law school with a blank slate, regardless of whether one of our colleagues, Dean Grant, was a magistrate judge. The only advantage he had was having a little bit of criminal law knowledge. So even being a judge before coming to law school, everybody still starts with a blank slate. So everybody's going to kind of be figuring out their balance ahead of time. Any last burning questions? Oh, doesn't look like it. So before we end, can everyone give one short, what is a piece of advice you would give a first generation student who's thinking about going to law school?
Okay, I'll be really quick. I do agree that a lot of people say, oh, don't go to law school, don't go to law school. It almost seems like the cool thing to say these days. I don't know why they're doing it. It's bizarre. But the one tip I have is not don't go to law school, but don't go to law school for the money. Go to law school because you care and want to make a difference. If you go to law school for the money, you might not end up enjoying what you are doing. I will say when I graduated and I went to the public defender's office, it wasn't for the money, I can tell you that much. And it was literally the one of the best 6 years of my life. I enjoyed every minute of the work and I would not have left. And I don't know if a lot of my fellow law school friends felt that way. A lot of the ones who went and worked at private firms, you know, you can make all the money in the world, but if you don't have time to spend it, what's the point? So don't do it for the money. Do it because you really want to make an impact and a difference. And then I'm gonna do two. Um, Always be respectful to everybody. I think, you know, when you are in court, when litigants are in court, when you have a client, um, always be respectful to those individuals. People who need your services are having some of the worst days of their lives, and having somebody that respects them and listens to them is very, very important.
Um, if I had to give one advice to first generation students, either in undergrad or law school, I would say this is something that I started doing in undergrad, is kind of going to my professors, you know, if I didn't really understand a concept in class, or if I did not so good on an exam. And I feel like through that, I kind of gained mentorships from someone. I don't even know if it was a mentorship per se, but kind of, you know, getting a perspective of someone who, you know, has already graduated college, already graduated, you know, grad school, something that I did not have, like going home and talking to my parents, kind of getting that kind of relationship. And I followed that through in law school. So, you know, in law school, you only have like one exam at the end of the year. I was that person that I would go to professors' classes the following semester. I mean, professors' offices after the following semester. And so even if I didn't do well, or I did, you know, under, you know, the median or the average, I would still talk to professors and see what I can do to improve. And through there, I, you know, gained a mentorship with Professor Lou Kasich, and she kind of, you know, helped me throughout the way with what I needed to do to kind of, you know, go through law school, and even just within the first year after law school and prepping for the bar exam. And so I think just kind of investing, law school is an investment, but also you want to let professors know that, you know, you are serious and that you want to learn and you want to understand. And so just kind of not just, if you just get a grade in the class and then you just, it is what it is. For me, I just kind of wanted to know what I could do to do better. And I think that as lawyers, that's always beneficial. Like even now, like if I win a case, I still want to know what I could have done better. If I lose a case, I still want to know what I could have done better. And so that's something that I would just advise. And I think that that can start in undergrad as well.
I think that my first piece of advice is just that you are capable, that you are able to do law school, you are able to be a lawyer. And I think we talked a lot about self-doubt, and that will creep in. But you know, there were many times, especially during my 1L year, that I had to tell myself I was capable of doing this. I'm here for a reason, and that reason is valid. I can do this. And so you can do this. You can do law school. You will be successful. And that's the first thing that I would say. I'm trying to keep it brief, although that's not really something in my vocabulary, as Morgan and Josue know. The other piece of advice is embrace education. You know, and that is true not just for learning the law. I mean, we can learn so much everywhere. But I think one of the reasons that I have been successful is that I love learning. And law school is a challenge, but you learn something every minute. And I just thrive off of that. I love learning. So the quicker I think you can kind of just embrace that you're here to learn. You're not here to be a lawyer on day one. You're here to learn how to be a lawyer once you get out and pass the bar. So I really think that those are the two things. Just you are capable, and just embrace the fact that you're going to learn. Those are my two pieces of advice.
Yeah, that's
This
one of the
way, be brief.
I was gonna say that's one of the reasons why Wes and I get along so well. We'll talk all day. And nah, but for being two pieces too, since everyone's doing two, it's first is, don't be afraid to ask for help. No one made it this far in their lives by themselves. As first generation college students, we tend to, because we've had to figure it out ourselves for most of our lives, we feel like we have to do this on our own, or we can figure it out on our own. It's okay to ask for help, especially in this profession. You're gonna need someone to help you, as we've discussed with mentorships. And the other thing is be professional with everyone. I think Judge Hamadani said it, treat everyone with respect. Um, and what I tell students all the time is, it doesn't mean that you have to be best friends with everyone and get along with everyone, but at the end of the day, you have to be professional because people, first of all, if you're in law school, people remember how you act in law school. And second, if you're an attorney, the person that's your or opposing counsel today might be your co-counsel tomorrow, might be your boss, or someone that you're asking for a connection to when you're applying for a job. And so people remember how you treat them. And so you want to be mindful of those things and always treat everyone with respect and in a professional manner. And those things will take you far. Because even if, you weren't best friends with someone, if someone else asked them about you, you don't want the first thought that comes to their mind to be a negative one. And so those are the two biggest pieces of advice that I could have for law students and for attorneys.
Whew, this has been an amazing panel. I'm so thrilled that you all joined us. The only other thing I would add, and this is something Josue has heard me say a lot as well, is to try to find your why. And your why is going to carry you through. There's a great book that I can't remember the author's name, but it's called Start With Why. But you don't need to read the book to find your why, right? So your why is, what is your reason for doing this? What is it that's going to push you through those 12-hour study days? What is it that's going to help you get through this really hard law school journey and the bar afterwards? So finding that reason for doing this is going to help carry you through your law school, the bar, and your career. Is it your why shouldn't be making money, like Judge Hamadani mentioned. It should be something personal and something that's going to keep pushing you through. And it should be something that's really meaningful to you as well. Whether it's being the first in your family to have that license on your wall, or whether it's giving back to your community, whatever it is, just find your why and hold on to it. I want to give a huge thanks to everyone on our panel. I so appreciate you all being here and taking time out of your Tuesday night to do this. This has been a wonderful discussion, and I just appreciate it so much. And I'm just so glad that we were able to do this. So thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful night. And that's all. Am I forgetting anything, Josue?
That's all I got. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Appreciate you.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.